What's up, everybody? This is the TD Experience NFL podcast, and I am your host, TD himself, Trey Downey, alongside my man in Baltimore, Maryland, Cliff Kidwell. What's up, Cliff?
What's going on, Trey? That was an exciting game. Exciting games week two. I'm ready to talk some football, man. And man, do we have a show for you guys? We got a
Yeah,
lot to talk about.
yeah. I mean, last week was one of the craziest early weeks that I can really remember in the NFL. You know, so much difference from week one to week two. There's a lot of teams. I mean, I'm feeling like Eminem. Will the real, name your team, please stand up. We're gonna talk about a lot of that today. We're gonna tell you who was the most impressive and least impressive from week one. Then we're gonna get into a little game of contender or pretender with some of these surprise 2-0 teams in the NFL. We're gonna tell you who's probably gonna make a run, get into the playoffs, and who's just having a good early season start. And then we're gonna take a look at the teams that have been very disappointing in the first 2 weeks. Out of the 0-2
Man,
teams, which team is going to have the best chance to turn it around? It's going to be some interesting talk there. Both of our picks to win the Super Bowl, both have started out the season 0-2. So that's going to
yeah,
be interesting
yeah,
when we get into that. Then we're
right.
going to go. Then we're going to go into Cliff's going to give you his fantasy pick of the week. I'm going to give you the bet of the week. We're going to get into our most intriguing game that we're looking forward to this weekend. And then we're going to put our money where our mouth is with our game picks. And that's what we've got for you today. It's going to be a big show, lots to talk about. So we're going to get it started really quickly. We're going to talk about what we said was going to be the most intriguing game of last weekend. And Cliff, your most intriguing game of last weekend, you said it was going to be New England and Buffalo. It was a very
Right,
intriguing game. So
right.
let's talk about it.
Well, you know what? Just like Rex Ryan said, I kind of ran my mouth and kind of ranted and said that Buffalo pretty much had this division tied up. There was no way anybody can beat Buffalo. They're impressive against the win against the Colts. I just pretty much had them destroying. Actually, I think my words were destroying the Patriots. And Trey, that did not happen. That did not happen. Once again, you know what? I was talking to my Patriots fan there. He was a close friend of mine. We were talking, and I said that they finally got their first win without cheating. Because we could speculate all last year that ball was lighter, but man, Tom Brady was slinging those balls, man. I mean, he was just going. I have some stats here. He threw for almost 466 yards. 466 yards and 3 touchdowns here, guys. And I'm gonna let you guys know that defense is no slouch. They even got one of the top players back on that defense, and it seems like Buffalo had no answers, Trey. Buffalo had no answers for Tom Brady. I mean, the play was fair, and they just dominated. Now, you can look at the score and say it was a close score, but those were petty points at the end. Tyrod Taylor was pretty much on the run the whole entire time. That's your boy, Trey. Your boy Tyrod Taylor did not look comfortable. He's a good quarterback, I will say that. But it just seems like the Patriots were bringing it. And you said the secondary was suffering. I mean, Patriots secondary didn't say they were suffering at all.
I mean, they did force some turnovers. Tyrod had 3 interceptions, but I will give Buffalo this. They talked a lot, and New
Yeah,
England was out to prove something, that they are still the kings of the heap in that
yeah,
division. But what I will say is Buffalo got down, and you can call petty points whatever you want, but Buffalo made that a one-score game in the end, and still had a chance to come back and win that game. Buffalo with Rex Ryan, they didn't stop fighting. You know, that's something that could be questioned in the past with guys like Chan Gailey when he was the coach up there,
oh
and
yeah,
even,
oh
and,
yeah.
e- and even Doug Marrone, a team that, when they possibly got down to teams like the Patriots and other top teams in the AFC, they would kind of fold. But this week, they kept fighting. Tyrod threw three touchdowns as well as those
Yeah.
3 interceptions.
He did.
Sean McCoy looked a little bit better than in week one. So I'm not ready to count Buffalo out
Of course not.
when it comes to making the playoffs or even still winning the division. I think Buffalo, it's going to take a little bit more time to gel and come together than it will the Patriots. The Patriots have a lot more continuity on that team than Buffalo does. A lot of changes with coaching staff, new quarterback, new running back, Percy Harvin, a new receiver in there. So it's a very different team in Buffalo, and they played great first week
Yeah,
against Indy. They the defense, that's really the most disheartening part, but I still think it's going to take a little bit of time to gel into Rex's system. I'll be really
Right.
interested to see the next time when Buffalo goes to New England, what happens in that game. But the Patriots are who we thought they were. They're a
Of
great
course.
team, and Buffalo is going to have to, step it up to the next level and knock them off if they're going to really stake a claim to this AFC East division.
And
Now,
to go back a little bit about that, to talk about a little bit, Trey. You're right. That defense did step it up at the end of the fourth quarter, which is a little bit too late when they actually brought it up.
mhm.
But I just want to let you know the Patriots. I don't know if you saw sometime after the second half when I thought Buffalo were going to go guns and blazing. It seems like the the Patriots just stepped it up. The Bills couldn't had no answer for them in the third quarter. I don't know if you watched the third quarter, but it was just shutting them down. They were going three and outs right off the bat. It just seems like the Patriots was really trying to show Rex Ryan that hey, we're still here. You might have changed teams, but this is still our division.
Yeah,
I
and
just feel like the Patriots are real.
yeah, they did show them that, and the Patriots are for real. A lot of people already wanted to jump off the Buffalo bandwagon. I'm not ready to do that yet.
No, no.
I think by the end of the season they're going to be the best team in that division. It's just going to take a little time to get ready. Tyrod getting more experience, and we'll see what happens there. Now we're going to get into the game that I said was the most intriguing going into last weekend, and that's San Diego and Cincinnati. Cincinnati, Andy Dalton again looking great. Cincinnati going
Yeah.
to 2-0, and I mean, you said I thought they were the most impressive team in week one. You were kind of skeptical going against the Raiders, but San Diego is a good, solid team,
Yes.
always competing right there to go to the playoffs. I said this could be a game at the end of the season when we're looking at who is just into the playoffs and who is just out of the playoffs. And Cincinnati gets the win. That's a big win over San Diego
Yes.
and possibly could be a tiebreaker when it comes to a wild card or something like that. Even though I think Cincinnati, even after 2 weeks, has put themselves in a very good spot to possibly win the AFC North. We'll see what happens getting more into division play. But Tyler Eifert looking great again.
Yes.
Jeremy Hill did not have a very good game after his
No, two fumbles.
after his great week one. Actually had negative fantasy points on my fantasy team. That kind of hurt. But Giovanni Bernard stepped up over 100 yards
Yes.
rushing. So that's the great thing when they have when they have that thunder and lightning mix of running backs. If one guy really doesn't have the hot hand today, they can go to the other one. And Gio Bernard certainly looked great. Phillip Rivers and Keenan Allen still hooked up a decent amount of times, but Cincinnati's defense held San Diego's offense. They're a high flying
Oh,
offense, and they
oh yeah.
they held them down a little bit. San Diego is looking good through 2 weeks, especially this Andy Dalton to Tyler Eifert connection that we've got going here.
Well, you know what? I pretty much kind of knew that was coming. Like I said, he was amazing in Notre Dame. And then when they had Gresham there, he just wasn't seeing the ball as much. Now that Gresham is gone and moved elsewhere, I had a feeling that Tyler Eifert was going to step it up, which I actually picked him up in fantasy in our league, Trey. But yeah, you said it. Hill did not look good. Just not that impressive player we saw last week when he actually ran up over the Raiders. Well, he did not look good. And I will say, we can't. Did the world forgot about Gio Bernard? Like, he's a monster. His cuts and everything like that. He just seems like he has it down. Honestly, we could have said that if Jeremy Hill was not there, he'd be the top premier back as well with the bells and them coys. He's just cuts are so smooth. And also, it's in my division, and I hate to say it, but Andy Dalton is finally earning his money. He's finally getting that check, Trey. He's cashing those checks, and he's putting his play on the field. They got AJ Green with the big contract. They really have no worries. I mean, we could sit here and say Marvin Lewis has been here forever, and he could honestly be on the hot seat. This could be his last season, Trey. But his team is just showing the fervitude and just like winning. They're just winning, Trey. And you said it a little bit before, that defense. I mean, they had two fumbles on their side of the field. That defense stepped them out and pretty much bailed them out of trouble because it seems you're absolutely right. You said it. Phillip Rivers, he just finds a way to win. He's a good winner. Um, he couldn't have anything connected. Oh, and Drake Kirkpatrick. I watched that game. Now, they were talking about him being a bust because they drafted him in the first round, and he hasn't done anything since he's been there. But he stepped up. He locked down Allen, and then when he switched, Floyd couldn't do anything either. It's just that Philip Rivers had no answers whatsoever.
Yeah, San Diego. I mean, it was West Coast team coming east for a 1 o'clock game. So San Diego,
What you said you hate.
Yes, it was still a good game. Still, but that's what you expect when you have two teams that could possibly be competing for playoff spots. And Cincinnati just again 2 weeks in a row, starting off 2-0. Great start of the season for Cincinnati. This weekend, big game as division play gets started in Baltimore. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. But now we're going to get into who we thought was the most impressive thing from week one. We'll switch this up every week a little bit. We'll talk about who we thought was the most impressive team, player, or even play. Just pick what was the most impressive thing that you saw in week 2 of the NFL, Cliff.
Well, I talked about it a little bit earlier in the show. I got to bring it back up. I need you to understand, ladies and gentlemen, I hate anything Boston-related sports. You're just arrogant fans, guys. Please still listen to us. But you just have this winning mentality. Okay, we get your Celtics, we get the Bruins, we get it. But I will have to say, and it pains me, Trey, to say this, you guys looked very impressive. And even though your team looked impressive, Tom Brady looked even more impressive on top of that. Now, this is not something we should say, oh, that's a surprise. No, but you got to look at this, Trey. With the scandal, they had pretty much since the end of the Super Bowl, since actually before the Super Bowl started, the scandal always since then. Also with the changing of plays and looking at the rules, and they put a new rule because of the Patriots. Tom Brady goes out there and goes against this tough team. Honestly, a tough team. I think I said it was going to win the division, and they go and dominate. Now, I will say that the team fought back to get it close, but honestly, Trey, I watched the game, and it just like New England had that whole entire game won. As you see, Tom Brady was firing on every cylinders. They double-teamed Gronk at one point, and Gronk split the two defenders and scored a touchdown, Trey. It was just Tom Brady was probably the most impressive, but altogether that team has just looked good. It's not something we should be surprised about, Trey, should we?
Yeah. I don't think so. I mean, it's New England. They're the defending Super Bowl champions. They should be doing this well. I mean, what he did against that defense in Buffalo, that's very impressive. And I mean, we should be impressed by it. But at this point, nothing Tom Brady does should surprise us.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And with all that scandal and everything like that, I think he's really just trying to to be honest, the Patriots have this image of the NFL of they're the bad guys. And honestly, they surpass any other team. You can sit here and say Cowboys that way, or you can sit here and say the Steelers are that way. But no, Patriots are the bad guys on every frontier. And for them to just get this win in Buffalo is just impressive. I can't sit here and be mad at New England for being good.
Yeah, I mean, you can't hate them for being good. Most impressive team that I saw in week 2 is the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, every year they seem like they're a surprise team. Last year they made the playoffs, but had so many injuries to quarterbacks. Lose to Carolina in week one of the playoffs, the wild card round. But this year I thought they'd take another step back as well. But they have looked fabulous. Fabulous. Yes, that's what I'm going to describe them for the rest of the 2015. They are the fabulous Arizona Cardinals.
But Trey, they played Chicago. Chicago.
Yes, they played Chicago. But if you look at some of the other NFL results from the first 2 weeks of the season, Green Bay was in a 1-score game with Chicago. You look at other teams that should have won. We'll talk about that when we get to the least impressive team from.
And Jay Cutler did get hurt. Jay Cutler did get hurt.
But this team is doing everything right. They return the opening kickoff for a touchdown. That defense is forcing turnovers, and a lot of people thought that the defense would take a step back with Todd Bowles moving on to be the head coach of the Jets, who they have looked phenomenal as well. But Carson Palmer getting back in there, throwing 4 touchdown passes. Chris Johnson and David Johnson, their rookie running back, showing flashes of brilliance there. Larry Fitzgerald, a lot of people thought he was done. Said Malcolm Floyd, he's the
Larry Fitzgerald went off of my fantasy this year. Just say he just went 3 touchdowns. Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah. Larry Fitzgerald is, back to the glory days of Larry Fitzgerald. And I think a lot of people might want to say, go back and look at last season. A lot of that has to do with who was throwing him the ball, with guys like Ryan Lindley throwing him the ball instead of a guy like Carson Palmer. Carson Palmer looking great, 4 touchdown passes. The Arizona Cardinals, they are for real. I'm ready to see what they do the rest of this season. And we'll hear it every week. The fabulous Arizona Cardinals.
The fabulous Arizona Cardinals. Okay.
Now all of that was very, very positive. But now we're going to bring some negativity into the TD Experience NFL podcast. What was the most disappointing thing you saw in week 2, Cliff? And I think I know where you're going to go first.
All right, guys. I need everybody to take a seat. Baltimore fans, I need you to adjust your computer screens, or maybe listen to this. But I want to say something that you just not want to hear. They should fire Dean Pease. I'm going to go into it. Yes, my least impressive is my home team, the Baltimore Ravens. Now, we were playing away. We were playing on the West Coast. We did stay over there. We did not come home. We didn't want to travel back and forth. So that should give us an advantage, you would think, right, Trey?
Yeah.
Wrong. Our defense was atrocious. And I'm saying it right now. I know we talk about head coaches on the hot seat, but honestly, I've said even with the Super Bowl win, Dean Pease, this zone defense he runs is just not happening. It's never worked for us. He's come into Baltimore and ruined a great tradition of hard defense. We didn't have blitzing. Carr didn't get touched once.
Derek Carr, man. Look at Derek Carr.
Now, everybody can sit and say, oh, we can't believe we lost to the Raiders. First of all, Dolphins fans have a seat. So anyway, now, honestly, to me,
the Jags. Just so everyone know,
Trey. I was going to mention it, and yes, you did pick the Jags, Trey. You definitely did. But anyway, now Raiders aren't a bad team to me, Trey. They really aren't. They have the offensive weapons. Now their defense is horrible. Their defense is straight up. Like honestly, when you know that the Ravens are going to throw to Steve Smith, why are you not guarding Steve Smith? Steve Smith had 150 yards, no touchdowns, by the way. But there's a particular play that I want to talk about, and the reason that this is the whole point, kind of summing up why the Ravens doing bad. I love my coach John Harbaugh. I love my team, but John Harbaugh pretty much complained and moaned and bragged, and it was said, "Hey, Patriots are cheating. Patriots are cheating. They shouldn't line up there." Trey, there was a touchdown to Crockett Gilmore that the Ravens had set Yonder on the outside. And Yonder did one of these, you can't see me, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm putting the hands up, one of these step back, like, hey, pass me the ball. And he was an ineligible receiver.
Exactly.
And we scored a touchdown on that drive, the same drive the Patriots scored on us. When you have to resort to, and I hate to say this thing, to cheating to win the game, it's pretty bad.
But they didn't even win the game.
I know, they lost.
I mean, are we gonna start getting into the conversation? Is Derek Carr an elite NFL quarterback? That's a tough loss. That's one when you look at the season, especially being in a division like this, that you really look at and you say you pencil that one in as a win. And maybe the Raiders did that, and maybe the Ravens did that, and maybe that was part of the problem. But that defense. Derek Carr, that's by far the best game that he's had as a pro in the NFL. He looked great. Touchdown to Amari Cooper. The one thing that I'll say as far as positives go for the Ravens, Crockett Gilmore. People were projecting him as possibly, a sleeper fantasy tight end coming into the season, and Crockett Gilmore looked great. Best Baltimore tight end since Todd Heap. So Whoa! Don't jump into that. Are you going to get into some Dennis Pitta talk or something?
Yeah. First of all, if Dennis Pitta didn't have a hip injury, he's the closest thing to Todd Heap. Also, Max, the rookie tight end we got from Minnesota
Max
has not
Williams,
yet
yeah.
has yet to be seen. I will say this, Trey, and we talked too much long about this. I'm sorry, I'm a homer, guys. The Ravens showed they are struggling without Terrell Suggs,
Yep.
and honestly, I didn't think we would do that bad, but we had no pass rush, no
Yeah.
pass rush.
One thing you can say about Baltimore is they have yet to come home for a home game. They're coming home here in week
Yeah,
3 against the 0-2 Ravens against the 2-0 Bengals, and it's a very important game for both teams. If Cincinnati this early in the season can take a 3-game lead in the division with a
right.
tiebreaker as well over Baltimore, that's huge. But if Baltimore can get back on the right track and get closer, hand Cincinnati their first loss of the season, we'll pick that game later in the show. That was huge. But now,
Trey, so I just want to go into a little bit. Yes, last week you said your Bucks were the least impressive. Honestly, I really want to hear this. Like, who you have as your least impressive? It's just on my mind. Who's your least impressive team? Least impressive team this year, or just going into who's your least impressive look at last week?
the New Orleans Saints. Um,
Okay.
every eliminator pool, every eliminator pick that you're talking going into last week had the New Orleans Saints. Get on the New Orleans Saints. If you have an opportunity to start Drew Brees in your fantasy league,
Yeah.
start Drew Brees in your fantasy league. Even people saying Rob Ryan, start the New Orleans defense. They can force some turnovers, shut down Jameis Winston and Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. But regardless, yes, New Orleans had a chance to possibly win that game at the end, but this is their 6th straight loss in the Superdome. Now,
Yeah.
Drew Brees possibly going down with an injury. Bad things are happening in New Orleans. I said it might be the end of the road for Sean Payton and Drew Brees, and I really think so. If Drew
Wow.
Brees is going to end up being out for an extended amount of time, we'll wait and see. Reports came out the other day that he was going to be out for an extended amount of time. Then yesterday, reports came out, said that the injury is not as severe as they thought. So he could be playing this weekend against Carolina. We will see when it comes to that. But losing to a team who just lost 42-14 in their home opener,
Yeah.
uh, at home when the Superdome is supposed to be one of the hardest places to play in the NFL. That's, just ridiculous. They didn't look completely atrocious, but the Bucks got so much pass rush on Drew Brees after they got nothing on Marcus Mariota. Jack Smith, a guy who was cut by the Buffalo Bills in week 3 last year, coming over to the Bucks on the waiver wire, an undrafted free agent, gets 3 strip sacks on Drew Brees, leads the NFL with 4 sacks right now. Jack Smith, it's great for Tampa Bay to have some kind of pass rush there. Jameis Winston, somewhat of a game managing
They
performance.
finally got that formula clicking.
Exactly.
That one pass to Vincent Jackson was just perfect.
Vincent, that drive at the end of the
Yeah.
first half, after New Orleans finally scored, Jameis led the team down the field, touchdown pass to Vincent Jackson. Mike Evans, first week back, didn't really do anything much in this game. Gerald McCoy went down at the very end of the game, but he will play this Sunday in Houston. The worst thing coming out of this game for Tampa Bay, Austin Seferian-Jenkins is going to be out 4 to 6 weeks.
Yes, that's going to hurt you guys.
Yes, great performance in week 1 against Tennessee. He was a little bit of a subdued performance here in week 2 against New Orleans, but they get the win 26-19. Some of the issues that they're going to have to fix is once they get the chance, once they get into the red zone, they're going to have to score more touchdowns, because the reason that game was so close is that they had to settle for 4 Kyle Brinza field goals instead of punching the ball in the end zone. And honestly, the final score of that game should have been, more of a blowout to Tampa Bay's side, because they had so many opportunities but ended up scoring field goals instead of touchdowns. But New Orleans, they are in big trouble, and I honestly believe that they could possibly be, in contention for the number 1 pick in the NFL draft, right there with the Chicago Bears.
Wow. Actually, it's, you mentioned that I was going to say Chicago, but you're absolutely right. You're not too far off. Go back on talking honestly, this team should have beat you, Trey. I will say this. Your defense looked very impressive. You only allowed them 1 touchdown.
Exactly.
So your defense was very impressive. But when you go down there and you kick, I believe, 4 field goals, it's a problem. And you know what this goes to show, Trey? They miss Gresham. Now, I have no idea what they were thinking to trade him to the Seahawks, but they miss
Jimmy
Gresham.
Graham, Jimmy
Jimmy,
Graham,
I'm sorry,
yes.
Jimmy Graham. I apologize. They miss Jimmy Graham. And when he was Drew Brees' only target to throw in, he has no one to throw it to. Brandon Cook could not get away from your defense. It seems like you guys are playing the old Tampa 2 again because you guys just pretty much have the full field covered. And Colston's getting old. He can't even beat his. Did you see that? He can't even beat the corner. I don't even know who your second string corner is, but they couldn't even
Jonathan
beat him.
Banks.
Who's not a bad corner, by the way. I will say
Yeah.
that, but it just seems like he's suffering not having that go-to guy. He has no one to throw the ball. He looks confused back there. And I'm not taking anything away from your defense. Your defense played good, but when you have no one to throw to, Trey, it's a problem. And plus, someone that was your number one guy last year, he has no number one guy. He has to solidify his one number one guy, and then maybe he can find him in clutch situations.
Yeah, a lot of people expected Brandon Cooks to step up and be that guy this year.
Yeah.
Hasn't been there so far in the first 2 weeks. But Tampa Bay, more than any other team, will the real Buccaneers please stand up? We're gonna learn. We're gonna learn a lot about the Bucs this weekend when they head to Houston. We'll pick that game later in the show. We've talked about who we thought was the most impressive and most disappointing from the week 2 of the NFL. But now we're going to get into a little game. We're going to look at contenders and pretenders. Some surprise 2-0 teams in the NFL this season. We're not really going to get into the Patriots or the Green Bay Packers because a lot of people, picking them to go to the Super Bowl. 2-0 is expected when it comes to those two teams. But you've got 9 2-0 teams so far in the NFL. So we're going to take a look at the other 7 2-0 teams and just play a little quick game of contender or pretender. Do you think this team is a contender to make the playoffs, possibly make a run, or do you think that this first 2 weeks of the season is, more of an outlier and they're going to fall back to the middle of the pack as the season goes along? And we're going to start with a team that got a huge win on Monday night on the road in Indianapolis. Ryan Fitzpatrick, Todd Bowles, Darrelle Revis, and the New York Jets. Cliff, are they contenders or pretenders?
They are contenders, ladies and gentlemen. They are contenders. Now, you can sit there and say their first win against the Cleveland Browns wasn't impressive, but if you actually watch that game, Darrelle Revis was covering all over the field. Their defense is for real, Trey. They put the pressure on Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck had no answers. Now, I don't know what's going on with the Colts right now. They're going into some kind of dilemma here, but I will say that right now, the Jets are pretenders. Todd Bowles has changed this team. Ever since the whole offseason has been started, it seems like he just has a lock on this team. It seems like this team who loved Rex Ryan, who just loved him, and you didn't think that Todd Bowles could control this team, he has done excellent. From all the way from the Geno Smith situation to now his defense is playing well. They are contenders to me, Trey.
I'm gonna go pretenders on the Jets.
Wow.
And more than anything, I think it's just because of the division that they play in. We know who New England is, and regardless of what happened last week, I think Buffalo is still a better team than the Jets. I think that the Jets might be better than the Dolphins, and a lot of people thought the Dolphins could possibly make a run into the playoffs, possibly even go to the Super Bowl this year. But
those people live in Miami.
I mean, a lot of people here in Florida, it's guys from the Orlando Sentinel picking the Dolphins to go to the Super Bowl. So, there was a lot of hype behind Miami. The Jets, that defenses look great, and the addition of Brandon Marshall on that offense to give them somewhat of a spark has really been great. Eric Decker has looked better this year with having another guy like Marshall on the team. But we'll see what happens. Andrew Luck, and the Colts did not look good on Monday night. We'll talk a little bit about them when we get into the best chance of an 0-2 team to turn it around. The Jets' defense looks great so far, but I'm not sure that they're going to be able to put together that record and score enough points when it comes down to the end of the season and passing teams like a Buffalo, like a Pittsburgh, even if they're competing for a wild card spot. So the Jets look good, but I still think they're a little bit of a pretender. Now we're going to get
Okay.
into another team from the AFC North. They have made the playoffs 4 years in a row, but are they contenders or pretenders? The Cincinnati Bengals, Cliff.
Cincinnati Bengals are definitely contenders. And another team that pains me to say that they're actually pretty good. I'm they do have one of the hardest schedules coming up, so it's kind of hard making this choice. But it's just I'm just name a couple weapons they have on the team. They have Gino Bernard, AJ Green, um, Sanu, who's last year looked impressive and they actually look impressive now. Then you go on the defense side, the defense seems like they just handling things all over the field. Buford has been out, and they finally get him back. So I'm sitting here. The schedule is pretty tough, Trey. They have teams coming up as far as just Baltimore, and then of course you got to play Pittsburgh. That whole division this year to me will be the hardest. And I'm not trying to be a homer. It will be one of the toughest divisions to play in. But I would have to sit here and say that they're contenders, Trey.
I think so as well. I've talked about them both weeks in a row as being very impressive the first 2 weeks of the season. This game, like I keep mentioning, is going to be very big in Baltimore if they can take that big of a lead in the division going forward. Andy Dalton looks like he has something to prove and has found another guy to get the ball to in Tyler Eifert. Jeremy Hill had a bad game. Giovanni Bernard stepped up. When you have two great running backs like that, the weapons that they have on offense, and Marvin Lewis coaching up that defense, even without Mike Zimmer, second year without Mike Zimmer. I think that you talked about Marvin Lewis being on the hot seat. I think to keep his job, they're really going to have to actually win a playoff game this season.
Yeah.
And how they've looked in the first 2 weeks of the season, I didn't think they would do it at the start of the year, but I think they really have a chance to take that next step this season because of all the weapons that they have finally surrounded Andy Dalton with. Now we're going to get into a team that you really wouldn't think we would mention when it comes into a contender or pretender situation.
Yeah.
But there still are a lot of skeptics out in Denver after their 2-0 start. Cliff, do you think the Broncos are contenders or pretenders?
I think they are pretenders, Trey. This offense is just not looking good. They're getting bailed out again and again and again by their defense. Their defense are contenders. The defense has been shut down, but they can't get a mix of who is going to be, if they're going to run the ball or they're going to pass the ball. Now, I love Gary Kubiak. Gary Kubiak has pretty much came to the Ravens and changed a whole new offense. But is it really the right offense for Peyton Manning, Trey? I don't think so. It seems like Peyton Manning needs to get control under the helm again. Like Tony Dungy said a while back ago, Peyton Manning is that kind of player that he makes the playbook. You change your playbook around him. You can't come into and introduce the system. And it seems like the system they're going off the old how John Elway won as well. So Gary Kubiak is clicking with the general managers, but what really matters is Peyton needs to be Peyton. Let Peyton be Peyton. I don't think that can go. I don't think Gary Kubiak's going to let that go. He's like a stern kind of guy. He believes his system works. I don't see them actually winning too much longer here because the games they have coming up is going to be pretty tough in the stretch. I have them as pretenders, Trey.
I'm going to have to disagree with you there. I think that they're contenders because of that defense that you mentioned.
Yes.
They've looked absolutely stellar on defense. Von Miller getting so much pressure on the quarterback. DeMarcus Ware as well. Danny Trevathan, a guy me and you are both very familiar with among the league leaders and tackles in the NFL right now through 2 weeks. That defense just looks stellar. Peyton, you said you want to let Peyton be Peyton, but how much of Peyton is Peyton anymore? Right. And you said Kubiak was, a little bit of a stickler to his system, but he has let Peyton get back in shotgun more than we've seen any Gary Kubiak offense get back in shotgun through 2 weeks in the league. I think it's going to take a little bit more time to mold and see what this is. CJ Anderson and that offensive line are really going to have to, pick up some slack here. They have not looked great. Evan Mathis coming over from Philly, he has not looked great inserted into this Denver offensive line. The offensive line is really going to be the area that needs to improve. They shouldn't have won this game in Kansas City, so we should really be talking about Kansas City in this contenders or pretenders. But, to get a huge win like that against probably the biggest threat to your crown in that division on the road
and at Arrowhead.
One of the probably right up there with the Superdome as in Seattle as one of the toughest places to play in the NFL. So that is a huge win for Denver. And because of that defense, I think that they're a contender, and they already beat Kansas City on the road in the division. So I think that they are on the right track to win that division again. Denver changing their identity a little bit as being a team that defense comes first,
Yeah.
and Peyton Manning can win you the game at the end, which he looked great in the fourth quarter against Kansas.
Yes, he did. He did. However, I will say we can all say that defense won in that game. Honestly,
That's true.
5 turnovers, that's impressive. That's very impressive.
It is. Now we're going to get into a team that's very interesting because of injuries. They've started 2-0, but injuries to their 2 best players out for extended periods of time. Tony Romo out at least 8 weeks, placed on the injured reserve designated to return list. And Des Bryant, nobody knows what's going to happen with them, the bone graft surgery.
Yeah.
Some people say that it's going to get him
12 weeks
earlier. Some people are saying that it's going to take longer because it's the same surgery and injury that Kevin Durant had last year, and we all know what happened with him in the NBA. So, Dallas, are they contenders or pretenders with Brandon Weeden? Yesterday they pick up Matt Castle, possibly to come in. We'll see if he gets inserted in there, if Weeden struggles at all. Dallas, are they contenders or pretenders?
They're pretenders, Trey. Let me tell you why. The 2 teams they have beaten are, to me, not that good. Well. Let me take that back. They beat one team that I actually thought was going to be very impressive. But it seems like that with Tony. Now, I will sit there and say absolutely they're contenders. But now with Tony Romo being out and Des Bryant, I'm having a hard time doing that. I don't believe in Brandon Weeden. Matt Castle can show some star power there, but I just don't feel like they have the weapons enough to be. Now, their defense is clicking all over. There's no way Tony Romo should go down and you win that game unless you have stunning defense. I'm still kind of baffled by that. Philadelphia being one. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but it's just, honestly, I just don't see them win without Tony Romo or Dez, Trey.
I'm going to go with pretenders as well. Winning those first 2 games are huge for them.
Yes.
Especially against division foes. They haven't played Washington yet. Who knows what Washington is at this point? They look great. Exactly. They look great against St. Louis, who is one of the most impressive teams in week 1.
I think that was one of our games. We said one of our teams that were most impressive, which is insane.
Exactly. But losing Tony Romo and Des Bryant – last year, the one game Brandon Weeden started, Des Bryant was still there, and they just chucked the ball up to him. They threw him the ball, I think, over 10 times. He only ended up having 2 catches because of how much that Arizona put on Des Bryant in that game last year. But both of them going out for an extended period of time is huge. And now Jason Witten, 2 sprained ankles and a knee injury, so he might be out this coming weekend against Atlanta, who we'll talk about in just a minute. But I think that they're going to fall off. If they can stay afloat, if they can even go 3-5 during this, 8-week absence of Tony Romo and be 5-5, because I don't think that any of the other teams in that division are going to have that great of a record. Both the Giants and Philadelphia both started the season 0-2. If the Giants pull out that game in week 1, this is a totally different thing, and the Cowboys are really down in the dumps. The defense looked great against Philadelphia, but how much can we really trust a Dallas defense going forward? I think that offense is going to take a huge step back. We're going to have to see if Joseph Randle and Darren McFadden and Dunbar can step up and, lead that team and possibly get them to a 3-5, 4-4 situation in these next 8 games. But, tough sledding ahead for the Dallas Cowboys.
Sure. I'm going to say this right now. They have to, in my mind, they have to win next week. They really have to. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but they have to win next week, and I'll tell you why. They have to. Reason why. But you're absolutely right. I think they're pretenders.
Yeah. Now we're going to get into the game that they play this coming weekend. The 2-0 Atlanta Falcons pulling out wins over. Atlanta played the same 2 teams that the Cowboys have in the first 2 weeks of the season. Just flipped. Got a big win at home against Philadelphia, and then they held on to a win there, and then they come back and get a big win at the New York Giants. I'll go first on this one. I think Atlanta are contenders. I think they're even possibly better, a little better than I thought going into the season. I picked them to go 10-6 and win the division. 2-0 is a huge start, especially with Carolina starting 2-0 as well. New Orleans doesn't look good. Who knows what the Bucs are? I think Atlanta are the favorites in this division. Matt Ryan, Julio Jones looks like he's right there with
Whew.
Antonio Brown. Julio Jones and
Oh yeah,
Antonio Brown are the two best receivers in the league at
in
this
the league,
point. No doubt
hands
about
down,
that. Matt Ryan looked
hands
great.
down.
The defense, Dan Quinn starting to get the system rolling. Odell Beckham had a big week, but Odell Beckham is Odell Beckham. They didn't put Trufant on him, which was very surprising to me. But Dan
Yeah.
Quinn, from his days in Seattle, he likes to keep his guys on certain sides of the field, just like he did with Sherman and Browner over there. So I think Atlanta's contenders. Tevin Coleman going down with an injury, but Devontae Freeman stepping up, scoring that go-ahead touchdown after Julio Jones with that great catch. I think Atlanta is a team that we're going to talk about when it goes later into the season and possibly into the NFC playoffs.
You know what, Dre? I'm right with you. I think they're contenders. To give you some reasons why, I'll give you a little stat line here. Julio Jones leads the league in receptions. They threw to Julio Jones. I'm looking at here 17 times. He caught 13 out of those 17
Exactly.
times. When you have a monster like that and just going off all cylinders, and your defense is stepping up and creating turnovers for you, I mean, like I remember I said my defense rookie was going to be Beasley this year. But honestly, they have some balance. They have some balance with their honestly in my mind, I'm going to say honestly. In my mind, I feel like with the Tevin Coleman and the Freeman going back and forth, you have Tevin Coleman with speed and power, and then you have Freeman with just straight up fast and speed. He finally gives them a good running game. Honestly, Trey, this team has missed. I mean, during your division, they have missed a good running game for quite some time. So with that balance there and that defense clicking, now it says that they're the worst in the league, but however, it's just that honestly they're playing to win. That's honestly, Trey.
They've got 2 wins to start the season. Big wins, especially when they're a team that only went 6-10 last year, missed out the last week of the season, looked horrible against Carolina. But now we're going to get into, people said at the beginning of the year and last year that the NFC South was the worst division in football. 7-8-1. The Carolina Panthers won that division last year. 2 out of these 9 2-0 teams in the NFL come from the NFC South, the Carolina Panthers as well. And, when we were talking about most impressive things from this past week, I almost wanted to throw Cam Newton's front flip touchdown into the end zone as possibly one of the most impressive
That was
things
awesome.
that I saw. It was great. He didn't fully stick the landing, but, I'm going to surprise you here, and I'm going to say Carolina is still a pretender.
Whoa.
And now this is because I think Atlanta is a better, more balanced team. If Cam Newton goes down with any type of injury, Carolina's done. The defense stepped up in the absence of Kuechly, but they did play the Houston Texans with Ryan Mallett. Houston not really, a world beater when it comes to offense. They have a good defense. That was still a close game. And they played the Jags in week 1. So Carolina, when they more step up in competition, it's going to be interesting to see what Carolina does. This weekend they played New Orleans, and New Orleans is a dumpster fire right now. So they possibly could start 3-0. A big game. If Tampa can get a win in Houston this weekend, which I'm not necessarily thinking they can do, but if Tampa can get a win in Houston this weekend, when Carolina comes to Tampa Bay October 4th, that could be a very big game for the future of this division. But I think Carolina's still more of a pretenders. I'm still questioning their receivers. Kuechly, if he's going to be out any longer, we'll see what happens with that. I just don't. If they make the playoffs, if they can have a 12-4 year like they had a couple years ago, I think Cam Newton needs to be mentioned when it comes to MVP candidates. I just don't think they can keep this going. Cam Newton's looked great through the first 2 weeks of the season, but I think that they're pretenders. I just don't think that they have enough weapons on offense to contend with Green Bay and even Atlanta in the NFC.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you again, Trey, on this one. I think they're contenders, man. I just feel like with all the injuries that's happened down with them, with the trouble with Benjamin going out for the rest of the season, with Kuechly going out the rest of the season, with Cam Newton, honestly, said like he's still playing hurt. He's still at 100%. I still think they're in a good division and honestly somewhat a good conference to actually still contend for a playoff spot. Now, I'm sorry, Trey. You can sit here and say your team that you have two little teams. You have a 1-1 team. You have an 0-2 team. You have a division that's playing a lot better than it did last year. I still don't think that division is the toughest division. Even with the Falcons doing as good as they do, I feel like the Carolina's right there with them. It's just Cam Newton's way of winning. Also, also we can talk about their defense too as well. That corner, I I forgot his name. Oh, Norman. Norman. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but he has been shut down so far this season. I don't know if you watched him this season so far, but he's been shut down. I will agree with you that when they come in when Tampa and Carolina play, we will see what they really have to show. Because I honestly I can sit here and say I really don't know about Buccaneers right now. They really confuse me if they're going to be a good team or a bad team. The way the offense played last week was just tremendous. However, I honestly have Cam and the Panthers as contenders, Trey.
We're disagreeing when it comes to that one, but now we're going to get to this last team on this list, the last 2-0 team. And coming from what I said earlier in this podcast, I think the world knows how I feel about the fabulous Arizona Cardinals. 2-0. They were my most impressive team in week 2. I think I've said all I really needed to say about that team, especially getting up on a huge lead. 2-0 in the division, Seattle being 0-2. So I think Carolina is a pretender, but Arizona, who Carolina beat last year in the playoffs, is a contender. If Carson Palmer can stay healthy, this is a team that's, I think, could go far in the playoffs.
Well, you know what? I will have to say that I agree. You pretty much said everything that went out of my mouth, and I'm actually stuck here, and I would have to sit here and say I agree with you. I already have nothing to speak on that. You're absolutely right. I give you that in some sense.
Yeah, Arizona's looked great so far, but now we're going to get into some teams. We're going to switch into a little bit of the negative side again. There are 9 0-2 football teams in the NFL. Some are, surprising. Some we kind of expected. I'll just run off the list of these 0-2 teams before we decide, say which one of these teams has the best chance to turn it around and get back and make it to the playoffs. The Baltimore Ravens, 0-2. Indianapolis Colts, 0-2. Houston Texans, 0-2. The New York Giants, 0-2. The Philadelphia Eagles, 0-2. The New Orleans Saints are 0-2. The Seattle Seahawks, very surprising there. The Detroit Lions and the Chicago Bears, 0-2. And out of these teams, Baltimore, Indy, and Seattle, and Detroit. So 4 out of these 9 teams were playoff teams last year. Philly went 10-6, just missed, and Houston went 9-7 and just missed the playoffs last year. So a lot of teams that a lot of people thought had promise going into the season that were good last year. Not a very high percentage of 0-2 teams make the playoffs. So Cliff, 1, 0, 2, do any of these teams turn it around and make it into the playoffs?
Yes. I have actually 3 or 4 of these teams actually turn around.
Wow.
I'm gonna speak lately. Yeah, I do. I already have 4 of these teams turn around. The number one, I'm gonna have to go with the Lions. I think the Lions have to sit down and get it together. And honestly, they're playing in another tough division in my mind, with Minnesota winning as well. And you have Green Bay, of course, in there. But Chicago is just pretty much a dumpster show, like you like to say, Trey. I like that word you say. They can pretty much win in there. And I'm looking at the schedule, and the schedule is not that tough. I think they can turn it around and actually start winning these games because they're losing.
This week is a big one for them against Denver on Sunday night.
Absolutely. Another team, I'm just going straight through this, Trey. Another team I have turning around is the Philadelphia Eagles. They have to start winning. They have to understand how to use DeMarco Murray. DeMarco Murray is you got him for a reason. You have a strong running game with him. Your offensive line is not that bad with the Lane Johnsons you guys have. Like, they need to start running the ball. I think they find a clicking thing with Sam Bradford. It takes a little time for a while for Sam Bradford. Trust me, I'm a Sooner fan. I know it takes a little while for him to start clicking, but once he starts clicking on all cylinders, he's a good ready to go. They have the talent there. I think they believe to turn it around. Another team I have turned around is, of course, my Baltimore Ravens. I'm sorry, it might sound like a little homer to me, but I feel like once we get the Jason Babbage getting back on this defense, John Harbaugh is going to say he's going to sit down. I think hopefully he talks to Dean Pease and say, hey, buddy, if you don't get it together, we're going to fire you. I just feel like that they have enough talent And with Perryman coming back with the wide receivers, because we need wide receiver help, Trey. Joe
Mm-hmm.
Flacco could not be thrown to a 36-year-old man the whole entire season. He just won't. His body won't put up to that pressure. Even though Steve Smith is a monster, it's going to be kind of hard. But once Perryman comes back, I think we have that deep threat again. Opens up to him. We got Gilmore. We also still might get pitted back to the season. I just see the Ravens turn around. Another team I have turned around are the Colts. Um, they they have the talent. I will say Andre Johnson has been probably the worst free agency pickup when we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about this team has everything there to actually be good. Um, when T.Y. Hilton hasn't really been healthy, he actually got hurt in the preseason, I found out, and wasn't 100% in his first game. Then he gets hurt in his first game, come back the second game, and he almost didn't make that game. I do today they played a tough Jets team. However, they're in one of the weakest divisions. So I feel like they can turn this thing around. Chuck Pagano is on the hot seat. We talked about this last week, but he's on a hot seat. I think they're going to have to sit down and figure out, like, Chuck, what do you want to do? Do you want to be here? Act like it. I feel like they have the talent there. Those are my four teams straight they can turn around. Have you noticed I did not say Seahawks? I told you they weren't making the playoffs.
Well, when I get into this, I'm going to tell you exactly what's going to happen. Uh, there's no way that four of these teams turn it around and make it into the playoffs. Something like
Wow.
12% of 0-2 teams. I think out of these 9 teams, I picked 3 at the beginning of the season to make the playoffs. Baltimore, I picked them to miss the playoffs. I think losing to the Raiders is huge, and I legitimately think if they lose to Cincinnati this weekend, which I'm going to tell you right now, even before we get into the picks, I think that they are going to lose to Cincinnati. I think that their season is done, and going 0-3, 3-0 Cincinnati. I don't really think that there's a way that they can come back from that. Houston, they've had a rough first 2 weeks of games playing Carolina and playing Kansas City. I think Houston is a little bit better than the record 0-2 indicates, but I don't think that they're going to be able to turn it around to the point where they make the playoffs. Philly's a complete dumpster fire. I said in our season preview podcast that they were either going to be really great or really bad, and they are really bad. That offensive line, you said they do have some talent there, but they look horrible. New Orleans, everybody knows what I think of them, and Chicago as well, 2 of the worst teams in the league.
Yeah.
Detroit, I just think that division is too tough with Green Bay and with Minnesota. This past weekend in Minnesota was a huge game, and that defense without Sue Fairley really looks lost. But the 3 teams that I picked to make the playoffs, the Giants are the team that I have the least faith in turning it around. They lost 2 games that they really easily could have won. And with the injuries to the Cowboys, there is a chance that they could, I think 9 games is going to win that division. So there's a chance that they could turn that around. I just don't have a lot of faith in the Giants right now. Once they get Victor Cruz back, the offense could start to click a little bit more. But the 2 teams that I picked to make the Super Bowl, Indy and Seattle, both 0-2, and both for different reasons, I think have a huge chance to turn it around and a huge chance to make the playoffs. First, I'll go into Indy. Chuck Pagano, that situation needs to be turned around, or else that could be what dooms them. But like you said, the defense, or not the defense, but the division is not very strong. I don't really see Tennessee or Jacksonville stepping up and having a better record than Indy at the end of the season, and Houston already 0-2. Quarterback questions there. So I think Indy can still win that division and get into the playoffs. And if you want to look at stats, the last team to start 0-2 and make the playoffs in the NFL was the Colts last year. So they're used to these slow starts.
Right.
So I think the Colts and Andrew Luck can really turn things around. And then Seattle as well, playing 2 very tough teams on the road. And Jimmy Graham has not been an integral part of this offense. I think that he's going to become one. But when you look at Seattle without Cam Chancellor as well, they need to get him in there. But Seattle, more than any team in the NFL, is different on the road than they are at home. And the Seattle Seahawks have not played a home game yet this season. Their home opener, along with Detroit and Baltimore, 3 teams on this list who have started 0-2 on the road. Chicago, they're in huge trouble because they've started 0-2 at home. But I think Seattle, getting that home cooking starting this weekend against a team like the Bears coming into Seattle. Seattle's an angry team. They're going to get this going. Arizona looks great at 2-0, but I think Seattle and Indy both turned around. I'm not sure that that's going to be a Super Bowl matchup anymore. I'm more concerned about Indy than Seattle. I have full faith in Seattle,
definitely.
especially to turn it around.
Well, Trey, let me tell you why we talked about in the beginning of the season why they are going to struggle. Now, I don't see how you have them turning around when they play honestly the hardest division in there. You have the Cardinals 2-0. Okay. Then you have the Chargers, who are 2-0. I'm sorry. Ooh, the wrong team. Sorry
You
about
went to
that.
the AFC West, yeah.
My bad. Got the West confused. I'm sorry. You have the 49ers, who still look good, and then you have the Rams, who are very good. Now, I know they had a miscue with the Redskins, which honestly, I think that they pretty much came in and said, okay, we got this game won, and they slept on the Redskins. That's what happens with the Redskins. You sleep on them, they somehow find a way to win. You have the 49ers, who actually had a bad game against the Steelers, but honestly, it's still a tough team. And then you have the Cardinals, who are 2-0 right now, who you pretty much just said have a good defense and honestly are contenders in that division. They play in a very, very, very tough NFC West. And with an 0-2 start in the NFC West, and with honestly those teams actually contending, I don't have them make the playoffs. I don't see how they turn it around.
I disagree with you there, especially with not having a home game. We'll see what happens when it comes to that. I still don't think the 49ers are that good, and who knows what the Rams are after that game against Washington.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens when it comes to that. But now, really quickly, before we get into our game picks of the week, Cliff, who do you have to start in fantasy football this weekend?
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so sorry. Please don't get mad at us. I told you to pick Amir Abdullah, and he pretty much put up 0 points. No, this one, I actually sit down, hold your seat, and I saw something last week, and it honestly shocked me. And I think you should go on your waivers wire and find Derek Carr. Derek Carr pretty much went up and destroyed our defense, ladies and gentlemen. And Amari Cooper is another player I'm kind of putting out there, but Amari Cooper, him have a connection. They see him in Crabtree's getting it going. Cleveland had an injury to the secondary. They're going to Cleveland, which is going to be tough to play. But Derek Carr is firing hot. If he's on your waivers wire, which most teams he is, I need you to go in there and sneak him in there. Sneak him in there, and honestly, watch the results. Watch the results he puts up, because Derek Carr is actually not his brother. It's a lot better. He is a good quarterback. He understands the pressure, and I didn't believe him in Fresno State, but he's proven me wrong, Trey. Now, last week you actually won me some money, man. I appreciate it. Thank you. You actually won me some money. But I'm interested. Who do you have your bet of the week? Who should I put my money on this week?
There are a couple interesting lines this week. There's some big lines, which you normally don't see in the NFL. The Patriots are 14.5-point favorites against the Jags, and the Jags coming off of a big win. I stay away, especially when it comes to the NFL. I understand it's the Patriots versus the Jags, but you never know what can happen in the NFL. So when it's a line that gets above, even above 10 points, I stay away from that. That's too big of a line in today's NFL. So I'm going to a really small line that I'm very surprised that it's so small, and that is Atlanta and Dallas. Dallas starting Brandon Weeden, no Dez Bryant, and possibly no Jason Witten. So this line could move, especially if Jason Witten goes out. Atlanta 2-0, and they're going to Dallas. Dallas, a lot of teams are better at home. Dallas has a much better road record than they do a home record. And Atlanta's only a 1-point favorite. So this is basically a pick 'em. If Atlanta beats the Cowboys, you're going to win money. So my betting pick of the week is the Atlanta Falcons over the Dallas Cowboys. You can take that one to Vegas.
All right, buddy. Yeah, all right, y'all taking notes. Trey got me some money. It's like $20, but still, it's money. It's money in my pocket. Ladies and gentlemen, write that down. Write that down.
All right, now we're getting in on the close of the show, but we're going to tell you, if you have that Sunday ticket package, which I'm sure a lot of you, if you're listening to an NFL podcast, you probably have the Sunday ticket.
I do.
Package. Exactly. So if you have time, if you're going to sit down, instead of watching the Red Zone channel, if your team's not playing at that time, we're going to give you one game to watch. Cliff, what is your most intriguing game of week 3 in the NFL?
Well, I picked them as I picked one team I picked to be my comeback, and I picked one team to be contenders. I think it's going to be a fabulous game at 1 o'clock. It's the Philadelphia Eagles at the New Meadowlands, beautiful stadium. I think it's called MetLife.
Yeah, life,
I
yeah.
really have Philly and the Jets being the game of the week, Trey. Let me give you some reasons here why. This is time for Chip Kelly to say, "Hey, my formula works. I told you guys to wait on it. We're starting slow. Watch me work, watch me whip, and watch me work. Because honestly, I feel like they're going to start clicking with DeMarco Murray. They're going to say, hey, we have him. He's here. We're going to run the ball. I think once we start running the ball, that read option starts to work. Those play actions start to work. I think Chip Kelly has to realize that this is not college football, but I can still integrate my schemes into the NFL. However, the Jets are a very ferocious defense. I think I said Todd Bowles has the handle on this team after the Rex Ryan era. I think they want to play for him. They honor him. They respect him. I think that Fitzpatrick is looking very good with Brandon Marsh. You touched on a little bit. Aaron Decker is actually doing very well. Honestly, I have the Philly and Jets being the game of the week.
Honestly, I think that
Yeah.
that one could end up being a little bit of a blowout. When Philly has no yards in the first half against a defense like Dallas, Philly has to turn it around this week. Or like we said, the hot seat in Indy for Chuck Pagano. People are really going to start to question Chip Kelly after this, and I think we could be already seeing the end of Sam Bradford. Sam Bradford has not looked good, but the game that I'm going to go into for the most intriguing game of the week is a pair of 1-1 teams, both trying to get above 500. And it's a team in Pittsburgh who their offense looked absolutely awesome last week.
Amazing.
Antonio Brown, even without Pouncey at center, D'Angelo Williams has been,
Yes.
had two great games. But this week they're getting Le'Veon Bell back.
Yeah.
They are going against the St. Louis Rams and Aaron Donald, Chris Long, Laurinaitis at the linebacker position, and that great defense. They were a little questionable against a team like Washington, but I feel like they play up or down to their level of competition. The Rams versus the Steelers, offense versus defense at 1 o'clock. I think that that's the most intriguing game of week 2.
Honestly, ladies and gentlemen, well, me and Trey are not going to agree on most things. I still want to stick with my Jets and Philly, but I will say this. There's a player to watch in that game. Actually, there's two players particularly to watch. There's Le'Veon Bell coming back off that suspension. And ladies and gentlemen, I need you to watch Antonio Brown. Let me tell you why, Trey. He already has 328 yards this is his third game. Yep. 328. He could very well be on the pace to break Calvin Johnson's record for the most receiving yards in a season. And I mean by a mile. By a mile, Trey. It's just that they cannot there hasn't been a team to stop them yet, and it's only the third week. He has 328, Trey. That's insane.
Exactly, and that's honestly without Martavis Bryant as well,
yes.
who's the number 2 receiver on that team. We could see 2 guys break the receiving record this season with Antonio Brown and Julio Jones. If they can keep this up, what they've done the first 2 weeks of the season, we could see 2 guys breaking the receiving records. But now, how we close the show, we're going to get into our game picks. And we're going to start with those surprising Washington Redskins last week picking up a huge win over the Rams. They're heading to the Giants on Thursday night. A team that's 0-2 and really needs to turn it around. Cliff, who are you going with in Washington and the Giants?
Well, honestly, ladies and gentlemen, even though I pretty much bragged on them and pretty much said they were horrible, I have Washington beating New York. Let me tell you why, Trey. That running game with Alfred Morris and Matt Jones from Florida. Hey, Florida Nation, you finally got someone that can run. You guys actually have good running backs. You have shown that you can decent running backs in their system. And honestly, with that run, man, I'm just so honest today, Trey.
Yeah, you are.
Washington, that run game you did get going, get some pressure off your horrible quarterback. I got you guys winning.
I'm going to go with the Giants in this one. I picked them to win the division at the beginning of the season. Washington had a great week 2. They looked horrible in week 1 against the Dolphins. But I think, the Giants, they could have won both of those 2 games. They need to close out a game. And they're at home. I think that they beat the Redskins. Now we're going to go into Tampa Bay at Houston. The Bucks coming off of a big win in New Orleans, going on the road again. Jameis Winston before the season said he was looking forward to this matchup against J.J. Watt, and I think he's biting off a little bit more than he can chew. You don't want to challenge J.J. Watt. J.J. Watt going against rookie left tackle Donovan Smith, who's looked okay through the first 2 games. I think he can eat Donovan Smith's lunch is what J.J. Watt's going to do. Get a lot of pressure on Jameis Winston. I don't think he's going to look as bad as he did in Week 1 against Tennessee, but I don't think he's going to look as good as he did in New Orleans in Week 2. I think Tampa Bay loses to Houston, but still a 1-2 start is decent for these Buccaneers.
Oh, what a homer. He's saying a 1-2 start's okay. That's how you know you have bad teams for a long time. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that with that rookie going against J.J. Watt, did you see J.J. Watt make a tackle a couple weeks ago with no helmet?
Yeah.
He's a monster. This team is honestly, they have a hard time winning games right now. But with the J.J. Watts, I definitely have them going beating Tampa at home.
We agree on that one. Now on to a game that I said was my betting pick of the week, Atlanta at Dallas. I already talked about this one. Atlanta only a 1-point favorite, so it's pretty much a straight-up pick. I think Atlanta goes to 3-0, and Dallas suffers their first loss of the season.
100% agree with you on that one. That's an easy pick for me. I have Falcons going into Dallas and winning. With no Tony Romo, no Dez Bryant, it's going to be hard for that team to win. And no running game. They don't know who wants to run the ball.
Exactly. Now we're going to go into Indy at Tennessee. Indy 0-2, very surprising. Tennessee, against the Bucks in Week 1 looked like world beaters. A lot of people thought they beat Cleveland in Week 2, but Johnny Manziel wins that battle of the Heismans over Marcus Mariota. Indy going into Tennessee, I think, when they get into this division schedule, I think this is where Indy is going to excel. I think Indy beats Tennessee. Marcus Mariota, the quarterbacks he's played his first 3 weeks in the NFL, Heisman winner in Jameis, Heisman
that was
winner,
insane, right?
Exactly, Heisman winner in Manziel. Now he's playing against Andrew Luck. Tough 3 quarterbacks to face in your first 3 weeks. I think Indy, though, gets the first win of the season at Tennessee. But if they lose, huge trouble in Indy.
Woo! I think this is a must-win for the Colts, an absolute must-win. I did say this is my turnaround team. I think this is when they start turning around Trey against that Dick LeBeau defense. I think they finally look and say, okay, we can win. I think they Colts are going to win this game.
All right, now we're going to Oakland and Cleveland, 2 teams that bounce back after rough Week 1s. Derek Carr, Johnny Manziel probably going to get the start in Cleveland again. I don't really like West Coast teams coming east for 1 o'clock games. I've said that before. I'll say it again. I think Cleveland gets the win, goes to 2-1. I think the defense is going to make a difference in this one. Cleveland has a better defense than Oakland, and I think they can shut down Derek Carr and get the win.
Honestly, I watched Derek Carr unload on my defense, and I honestly, with that team, is just looking so good. I feel like they finally have that with that win against a team that was actually Super Bowl contenders on their back. They feel like they can win in this league. I have the Raiders actually going into Cleveland and winning.
We disagree there, and I think there's another game right here that we're about to disagree on as well. Cincinnati at Baltimore. I already said it earlier in the show. I think Cincinnati goes to 3-0, beats Baltimore. Baltimore in huge trouble without Terrell Suggs and that offense not really clicking.
I have all the way faith in my Ravens, so I'm going to stick with my home team. I'm going to say the Ravens. Just with Babin coming into this game and showing that we can actually pass rush. I think Dean Pease is on a hot seat. He realizes that okay, I have Ladarius Webb. We also picked up another corner, Will Allen
From
Miami Dolphins. Yeah, I honestly think that the Ravens will get it clicking together. They'll find that run game with Forsett, and we win at home.
All right, now going to the Jacksonville Jaguars at the New England Patriots. The Jags get a huge win, probably Blake Bortles' biggest win in the young stage of his career against the Dolphins. But now they go to New England. The Jags aren't ready to beat the Patriots in New England. New England wins this one.
Easy, hands down. I have Tom Brady throwing 5 touchdowns, Trey. 5 touchdowns. You can mark that down. Ooh, 5 touchdowns.
That's a huge game right there, but you can never bet against Tom Brady. Now we're going to go New Orleans at Carolina. Who knows if Drew Brees is going to play. Carolina 2-0. That defense, I think, is going to be too much for New Orleans. I think Carolina beats the Saints.
We are agreeing a lot here. I am being honest, and I am going to be honest with you. This is weird for me to actually agree with you a lot of things. But yes, hands down, I've said that they are contenders in this team. You've said they aren't, but I really think Carolina goes in and they'll start the season 3-0.
Yep, Now we're going to go into the game you said was the most intriguing of the week, Philly at the Jets. I think the Eagles, they just aren't very good right now. And going with that offense not clicking whatsoever and going up against a defense like the Jets, I think the Jets win. The Jets, I said they're pretenders too, but I think they're going to start 3-0. Philly starts 0-3.
This one's a little hard for me, Trey. I really have Philly turn around and start winning their games. And the Jets are just their defense is just so great, and it's kind of hard for Sam Bradford to go into the Jets and try to compete against that team. However, I'm gonna stick with my pick in the beginning of the season. I said Philadelphia was going to have the most explosive offense in the league. I feel like they find how to run with DeMarco Murray. I believe they open up that play action. I believe they trick when Revis Island and open up the lane. And I think you will see a deep throw on Revis' side. I think Philadelphia wins this game.
All righty, I disagree there. So we're disagreeing a little bit more here. Now we're going to go into
Okay.
a very intriguing game, San Diego at Minnesota. San Diego East 2 weeks in a row. Minnesota gets a big win, getting Adrian Peterson more involved in the game last week against Detroit. I think
Yes.
Minnesota beats San Diego at home. Peterson gets even more involved this week.
You know what? The world is okay. Now I feel okay because I'm gonna disagree with you. Whew, I was starting to worry. Fantasy fans, AP finally showed up. I know you guys are happy because I know I am. Having both of my leagues, and I was kind of worried there. I believe Minnesota wins this game. Teddy Bridgewater finally having that running game. Play action opens up. They have good wide receivers that they haven't really used yet. Mike Wallace is actually a very good wide receiver in Miami for letting him go. I don't understand that. However, they couldn't pay the man. I got Minnesota winning.
All righty, now into the game that I said was the most intriguing of the week and probably the toughest to pick this week. Pittsburgh at St. Louis, getting Le'Veon Bell back. At the beginning of the season, I picked Pittsburgh to miss the playoffs, and I picked St. Louis to make the playoffs. So I'm going to stick with those conventions. I think it's going to be a very close,
Oh,
probably the best game of the week. But I think that the Rams beat the Steelers at home and proved to 2-1, and they look more like the team that they were against Seattle instead of the team they were against Washington.
Trey, I told you I was just today is just my honest day, right? This actually physically hurts me. This really hurts me to say this, but I really think Pittsburgh just has that offense that is not. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, 328 yards, 328 yards in the season so far. Then you got Le'Veon Bell coming back. I mean, I know fantasy owners are just going crazy, going wild right now. I believe they're happy. The reason why I didn't pick Le'Veon Bell to be my fantasy pick of the week because we know who he is. Even though he's playing against a tough Rams defense. I still haven't picked my pick, Trey. Just give me a second. Rams go. They play Redskins, and the Redskins just beat them down with the run game. They had no answers whatsoever to stop that run game, Trey. So my pick, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be the Pittsburgh. It really pains me to say this. It really hurts, Trey. My chest is hurting. I don't know how I'm going to be okay with this pick, but I'm going to pick Pittsburgh. Sorry that was so long, but Pittsburgh is going to win this game.
It's a tough one. That one is, I mean, you're picking Pittsburgh again. You Ravens homer.
Ah,
Some of these Steeler
it
Nation
hurts.
fans might start liking you. Now we're going to go into the 4 o'clock games. We're going to get into an NFC West showdown. San Francisco goes to Arizona. I think San Francisco aren't as good as the first week. They're more like this team that played against Pittsburgh. Arizona, I think they're a very, very solid team. They come home, get a big win against San Francisco, move to 3-0.
Yeah, Arizona just looks really good. They just look really good. They're going at home. Good division game, so we could see some good division rivalry there. However, Kaepernick has a tough defense to go against. Arizona wins.
Now another divisional matchup, Buffalo heading to Miami. Two teams that got off to good starts in week one, lose in week two. Tough divisional game there. Buffalo probably a little bit both. Not, I can't even say Buffalo is going to have a little bit more of a hangover. They lose to the Patriots in a game that they really, hyped up, but Miami loses to Jacksonville. So, two
Woo!
teams, yes, two teams that really need to get back on the right track. I think Buffalo's defense wins them this game. Miami does not have the kind of weapons on offense that that New England does, and Miami had trouble controlling Blake Bortles and Allen Robinson. I think Tyrod Taylor, Sammy Watkins, Percy Harvin have a big day. Buffalo beats Miami in a game that's pretty close.
You know what? I don't got this being close, Trey. I don't understand why you have this close at all. Miami fans, for anybody that got on me for the Ravens to lose to the Raiders, all I say is that they lose to Jacksonville. That's all I have to say. Blake Bortles is definitely coming to his progression. Him and Allen Robinson, man, are finally getting things clicking. I've always believed in Allen Robinson at Penn State. He's a phenomenal catcher. However, you're playing the Buffalo Bills, baby. You have a team that's coming off of a huge loss for running their mouth. I think Rex Ryan keeps it quiet, goes in to Miami and beats them down. Trey, you said that you had the Saints and the Bears competing for the number one pick. Miami's not too far off. Miami's right there. I'm sorry. I just don't believe in Miami. Miami's right there. They barely beat the Redskins, who actually shown that the Redskins can win. So that was a good win for them. I'll give them that. But for them to lose to Jacksonville just loses all faith in them. I think Miami loses this game hands down easily.
I don't think Miami's up there for the number one pick. I don't think they're making the playoffs like a lot of people think. But, I just don't trust Joe Philbin there. I trust Rex Ryan more. I think Buffalo's a better team. That's why I'm going with them in that game. Now, Chicago and Seattle. Chicago, I think, is one of the worst teams in the league. Seattle, an angry team. Their first home game of the season at CenturyLink Field up there in Seattle. This is the easiest pick of the week. Seattle beats the Bears with Jimmy Clausen as their starting quarterback.
Well, I think I had a surprise pick last week.
Oh my
I believe
gosh.
I lost.
You are psychotic. You are certifiable. I don't think you're going to be here next week because you're going to be in a padded room.
Hands down, this is probably one of the craziest picks, but I will say that the Seahawks fans have something there where they're looking at stars like Sierra. Did you hear about that, Trace? Break up Sierra and Russell Wilson because this is a curse to the team. I believe that curse continues. I think with Jay Cutler being out, Alshon Jeffrey, Matt Forte step up. Alshon Jeffrey missed last week. I had to sit in my fantasy. I believe he comes back. I believe this quarterback, Clausen, who was a great player in Notre Dame. He was the number one. The Panthers drafted him thinking that he was going to be their number one pick, but then Candy got number one pick, and then Cam Newton was there, and then we don't hear about Jimmy Clausen. Jimmy Clausen is actually a good quarterback. I will remember him watching in an Under Armour game. I remember watching him in an Under Armour game. He was impressive. I know. I remember watching Notre Dame. He was impressive. Notre Dame quarterbacks, you just can't. They're like a buy or sell kind of type deal. I have Chicago going and beating the 12th man and the Seahawks and going on to my rant in the beginning of the season why the Seahawks won't make the playoffs. Chicago wins. Thank you. Welcome, Chicago.
I don't know if that's something you should say you're welcome about. I don't even know if Chicago fans are going to watch the game this weekend. They probably shouldn't. Now we're going to get into a Sunday night game, Denver and Detroit. You pick Detroit that they could possibly be a team that's going to turn it around. Denver, that defense. This is a tough one to pick as well. Detroit really needs a win, but Denver's defense has just looked so good, and Detroit's defense hasn't looked that great without Sue and Fairley, like I said. So I don't think that they're going to get as much pressure on Peyton Manning as Baltimore and Kansas City have in the first 2 weeks of the season. So I think Denver wins. Denver moves to 3-0. Detroit falls to 0-3.
I have Detroit winning this game. They turn it around. Like I said, I believe the Denver Broncos are pretenders, and that defense is massive, but they haven't played a Calvin Johnson before. They haven't really have the speed of Abdullah in the backfield before. Honestly, this season so far we can say. They had, you can say Jamal Charles is one of the speeds, exactly. But when Alex Smith is throwing the ball, I just don't believe in him. I really don't, Trey. I just don't see him being a good quarterback in my mind. But yeah, I think Detroit wins at that beautiful stadium, and Detroit comes out with upset over Denver.
Another upset pick for Cliff this week. He's either going to have a great record or a horrible one. We're going to get into the Monday night game, and I want to give you an upset pick every week, and this one is one that I've looked at as possibly, this could be, an upset pick because I think Kansas City's very good.
Yes.
But Green Bay at home at Lambeau, I'm going to go more chalk this week. I think Green Bay wins at home, goes to 3-0. Kansas City falls to 1-2, but I still think they're a team that can put it together and get a wild card spot in the AFC. Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers win and go to 3-0.
The best team in the league right now. I picked them to go to Super Bowl. Green Bay wins this. Lambeau is a historical field. They just really good team right now. When they're really good and they play at Lambeau, you can pretty much give it a sure win. I just have Aaron Rodgers going to town on Kansas City. I think it will be a close game because Kansas City's defense. I like I said, I'm kind of against the wall with Alex Smith, but Green Bay will win this game. And it should be a good one to watch. It should be a good one to watch.
Yeah, very good, very intriguing Monday night football game. Both of the late games this week look very good on paper. Not quite as, great slate of games as week 2 was, but there's a lot of intriguing ones that are hard to pick. We talked about the Jets and Philly, Pittsburgh and St. Louis, Buffalo and Miami, Denver and Detroit, Kansas City, Green Bay, all very, very good games. It'll be great to sit down, sit around all day on Sunday and just watch some football, drink some beer, eat some chips and salsa, just have a great time watching the NFL this week. And that's going to do it for this week's edition of the TD Experience NFL podcast. Cliff has one more thing to give to you before we leave, a little bit of a parting gift from my friend Teddy Bear Cliff.
Last week, there was a Facebook of the week from a fan. We have another one, Trey, that I just thought was hilarious and I got to share. This comes once from my boy, Zach Dean. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sending this in. It's a meme out there. I'm going to read it to you. The Bucks, Jags, Raiders, Redskins, and Browns all won today. That sentence will never ever be said again for the rest of this history.
That's true. That's why week 2 was so crazy in the NFL. We'll see if week 3 is as crazy. I'm Trey Downey. You can follow me on Twitter at TD Experience, like the TD Experience on Facebook. Listen to this podcast, rate it, leave a comment, tell us what we're doing right, tell us what we're doing wrong. We're looking to improve. Cliff, where can they follow you on Twitter?
They can get me on Teddy Bear Cliff on Twitter. You can also find me on Teddy Bear Cliff Kidwell on Facebook. Ladies and gentlemen, we really appreciate your time here. I appreciate you guys sending in your Facebook things. I thank you for listening to us, guys. We're getting it started. We're having fun with this. We're getting together. We really appreciate your comments. I want to thank everybody yesterday who actually hit me up on my cell phone, let me know how I sound. I've been honest this week, so I appreciate it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Thanks, Mom and Dad.
Cliff Kidwell is not a liar. That's what I'll leave you with today. We will talk to you next week, recap week 3, look forward to week 4. We possibly could be recording this on my birthday next week. Wednesday's my birthday, so it could be a nice birthday gift to myself, sit down and talk some football. But that's it for week 3 of the TD Experience NFL podcast. The most honest man on planet Earth, Cliff. I'm Trey Downey. We're out of here.
Have a good one, guys.